Lil Chan and Slender Dad doing their thing. Friday night stream where the fandom sings. Pop culture chat, movies and games. Live on YouTube making waves. Brahma bowl with bourbon in his hand. Always brings the laughs, he's got it planned. Fetch is most cool like no other dude. And YouTuber with an attitude. Ascended art, get ready to start. With all the laughter and thoughts so smart. Grab your snack, sit back and see the best damn stream on your TV. Brahma bowl sipping bourbon, he's swirling, he's wise. Lil Chad tips are solid, he's a YouTuber prize. Matt Chivo drops facts like it's hot, he's on fire. While Slender Dad's swordplay skills never tire. Brahma bowl joins with bourbon in hand. Matt Chivo's wisdom across the land. YouTuber always in demand. Together like a well-tuned band. Lil Chad's got trivia, he's the movie king. Slender Dad swords make the chat swing. Slice of action with a humorous ring. Pop and buzz, it's a vibing thing. Ascended art, get ready to start. With all the laughter and thoughts so smart. Grab your snack, sit back and see the best damn stream on your TV.
And that intro from Mad never gets old. Yay, welcome to another episode of the Send in Art. We got a great special guest joining us today. We got Nerd Cookies, Elaine, coming in here to give us some Dune chat since that premiered. Thanks for being here.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Yep. And then we've got, as always, we've got Slender Dad, the co-host, and Brahma Bowl, I guess you would be the regular, whatever the proper thing
He's
is.
the unofficial producer, obviously.
Sure.
That's true. Well, I mean, if it's a movie credit, would it be the with or and credit for Brahma?
With.
There you go. It looks like you're
demand in the contract.
the with credit. Yep. Yeah, having guests in here really helps get people excited. All right. So this is good because I've been a Dune fan. I think I read it first in high school. Then, like a lot of people, kept rereading, in college at various points. And it's funny because when I was in college is around when Herbert's son and Kevin J. Anderson started publishing their prequels with the first trilogy, the Butlerian Jihad books. Then I believe the order they went with was the Great Houses one, where they did the House Atreides, House Harkonnen, and House Carino.
Yeah.
And they kept skipping around because then they did I think they did a couple more. They did the next trilogy, which is what this show leads into this show, which is the Great Schools trilogy, with the Mentats, the Navigators, and the Bene Gesserit sister. It was actually supposed to be 4 books because it was also going to have a whole book with the Sword Masters as the title.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, the sales had started already slumping, so they were like, "No, we're doing 3. You got to cut it down." So
they were bringing them out pretty fast and furious at that time.
Yeah. And then they moved back into the directly before Dune zone where they did like a Lady Jessica book.
Paul of Dune.
Oh, yeah. Those were
Paul of Dune. Yeah.
just before the movies. Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't read those actually.
It's funny because Elaine was mentioning in the pre-show that they basically are obsessed with filling in every micro detail of what happened, and when that doesn't need to be there. And that is what these books are. At once they're kind of like just adventures. They lean more to an action adventure sci-fi than they do deep thinking sci-fi, which is very contrarian to what Frank Herbert did.
Very different tone, yeah.
But they're also obsessed with like you said, filling in the details, which doesn't fit that, right? Like usually action adventure sci-fi is more just like fly by the seat of their pants. But with this one, they do a lot. Like when they did the Great Schools trilogy again, which is what directly leads to Dune Prophecy. These are the book series that were like when Valia Harkonnen is doing her voice, like flashback to Raquel dying. That's in those books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they like go over like Mentats. They are very detailed. Like this is how they create a Mentat. This is how you create a Bene Gesserit sister. This is how you create a Navigator.
Yeah, and unfortunately, there's a lot of details that are just very inconsistent with what Frank Herbert did write. So he didn't have this huge detailed storyline about the Great Revolt, the Butlerian Jihad, the war against machines. But so there's like this, but he gave you enough. He gave you enough information to know what it was. What was the heart of the conflict? And this was to just give his story a foundation. So what some sci-fi stories, the main story is machine or man versus machine, but that was just Frank Herbert's backstory for the story he actually wanted to tell, which was an examination of humanity, how it has changed over thousands of years, what hasn't changed too, and just examining human society and civilization and through that lens without the crutch being on technology so much.
Yeah, and one of the things that I just found completely out of, like, there's no way, and the Cymex as a concept.
Yeah.
I
Oh
was like,
yeah.
there's no effing way Frank Herbert wrote that down in notes.
So,
No way.
yeah, and so when I say like the war against machines, it was a revolt against machines, and it is in the first book of Dune, and really that's all you need to know about it. And I don't know why they didn't take Frank Herbert's direct descriptions in describing that event, because it's once man had handed over their thinking to machines in the hopes that this would set them free, but that only allowed other men with machines to enslave them. That's what that conflict centers around. It's not men versus killing machines. And the way it looked, I didn't like the way it looked in that
In the
first
show.
minute. It looked very cheesy, and
Yeah, in
I don't know.
fact,
I've just seen it done
Very
better. Like,
Terminator 2.
yeah, even if you were going to do that, which has been done a lot of times in sci-fi, and I like the concept, I've just seen it done better, like The Matrix.
I had it
Much
queued
better.
up
Kind
because
of
that,
War of the
yeah.
Worldsy, like discount War of the Worlds is what I
Well,
saw.
it does actually match the description of the Cymex from the book.
Crab walkers.
Which
Yeah.
is like, so Slender, you didn't read these, the probably, I don't blame you, you didn't read the book. So in the very beginning of, like,
I did some cursory research, but I have never read these books.
so the
I read the
Butlerian
Dune book.
Jihad trilogy, which is ostensibly the kickoff to the entire Dune saga, because that's when we meet the main thing is that's when we,
According to his son.
well, yes, that's where we meet the Zion of the Atreides line. The
Uh-huh.
Harkonnens had been around a while, but the Vorian Atreides was actually, this is how stupid. All right, and so Vorian Atreides, who is the person who spawns the entire Atreides family, is the genetic descendant of one of the Cymex, which are the basically human brains inside robot bodies. So they took that line, like Elaine was talking about, where men with machines enslaved man, and they went super literal with it. Where the backstory under this this is these guys created artificial intelligence and armies of machines to rule all of humanity, and as their bodies got older, they actually had their brains removed and put into machine bodies so they could be immortal. And then
Futurama canisters.
yeah, actually that's exactly what it was
So they
described
were Richard
as.
Nixon.
Yes,
Yeah.
except instead of heads, they were just brains. And the computer that they created to help enslave humanity, which was called Omnius, turned on them. But because they had hardwired code into Omnius that it couldn't kill any of the Cymex, they were still around, even though Omnius, the Skynet of this universe, was the one running all the AI stuff. It's stupid.
Yeah. It's just not how I envisioned it when you hear the description. So there's another description too, and that was from the God Emperor himself. I think this was in Children of Dune, I think. Uh or no, or is it God Emperor of Dune? But it was Leto the Second, and he was recalling those events because as a Kwisatz Haderach, he can see into the past. And he said regarding the jihad that the target of the jihad was a machine attitude as much as the machines. and said that humans had set those machines to usurp our sense of beauty, our necessary selfdom, out of which we make living judgments. Naturally, the machines were destroyed. So that's another quote there that just doesn't really seem to, it doesn't seem to align with this image here. It also looks
Yep.
kind of silly too. Are they having swords? I don't know what.
Yes, they were having swords. So this is another thing. So we had sword masters at this point in the they were trained specifically to fight Cymex.
I mean, how'd they win? I mean, from this perspective, it doesn't look.
Well, yeah, they didn't have personal shields. That's the other. Okay.
No Holtzman
Yeah.
effect. Yeah.
Yeah, they hadn't developed personal. So that's the other. We have the Deus ex machina of all time with Norma. How are we going to do it? Senva. That's how. Okay.
Yeah.
I say it differently in my head. Anyway, Norma Senva is at once the alpha and omega of the sisterhood and navigators, because she's the most. She creates the Holtzman, which are the folding space drives. She does the Holtzman shields, which are the personal shields that everybody in Dune uses. She's the first Bene Gesserit where she actually gets full body control because she's a descendant of what were the sorceresses of Rossic. And she's also the married to Joseph Venport, who is the founder of Venport Industries, which turns into Chom and the Navigators. And she becomes the first Navigator. I mean, Elaine, did you read all the book? Did I miss anything like covering
No,
the
you got
resume?
it.
That's about right.
That's what it sounds like when you say that. It doesn't sound like Frank Herbert's writing style at all. Yeah, it just seems very pop sci-fi, like you were saying, and there's nothing wrong with that. I that has its place too. I like man versus machine stories. Love Battlestar Galactica. Love The Matrix. But it does stand in stark contrast to Frank Herbert's writing style and his themes. So that's where I am with this show, is that it wasn't from the mind of Frank Herbert didn't write it. So that's how my expectation going into the show. But I did have hope for like the original storylines, actually, because I kind of was looking forward to other writers coming in and having their take or having a share and expanding out the lore a bit, or just contributing to the franchise as a whole. Not really the lore, but because it's just been Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson for so long. So I was excited for something new. And the original storylines, I will say, that is my favorite part of this first episode.
Yeah, so
Eric, this trilogy this show apparently takes place 10,000 years before Dune.
Before the birth of Paul.
Before the birth of Paul. So the Butlerian Jihad takes place 10,000 years roughly before where we pick up with Dune proper with the first book.
Okay.
This story specifically is roughly about 130 to 150 years after the end of the Butlerian Jihad. So that's when House Carino took over as the emperors.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the part where it gets all funky, because like Elaine was saying, we have new creators who are taking characters that I think they as building blocks, and they like the names and they like where they are in the universe, but they're completely basically disregarding a lot of what just happened, because the end of the Great Schools trilogy is what we see in this flashback at the beginning of the first episode.
Yeah, it's about
so that's 30 years. Yeah. So within 30 years, all right. So at the end of the Great Schools trilogy, the Carino Emperor had been killed, and they had replaced him with his brother, because Venport, the grandson of the original Joseph Venport, didn't like the way that emperor was very buddy with the remnants of the Butlerian Jihad and wouldn't let them do any technology because they couldn't.
Uncomfortable every time you say jihad.
Well, I didn't choose it. Yeah.
Hey guys, sorry I'm late. I forgot that I did a whole cleaning thing on the PC and lost all the passwords and stuff on StreamYards and Twitter, so I had to go through all this different crap. And then I was like, oh, I made that reface of Nerd Cookies 2 years ago when we were on with Sporking. Let me find that real quick. Found
That's
it.
great. Yeah. Oh my goodness, it seems forever ago.
It was. Yeah. But that's proof she remembered me, just
Good
like in my
memories.
tweet.
Yeah. So they kill off the emperor, replace him with his brother. This is 30 years ago roughly, and somehow we've already moved on to his son. Spice is around. People's
Yeah.
lifespans should already be getting very extended because the emperor, like the end of the Great Schools trilogy is when Chom gets made, because the emperor who gets the brother when he takes over kills the Venport grandson. The navigators get created, and he takes over what's left of the Venport Industries and makes it Chom, and he's running it, and then cuts in the Landsdrad as shareholders. How, like, they're not even talking about any of, like, they're not being, and I get it, because if I was these creators of the TV show, I'd be like, I don't want to touch that shit.
Well, I
Right?
think it's actually the showrunners have stated that it's not an adaptation of that specific, that it's inspired by the Sisterhood of Dune novel. So there is creative liberties there, which I'm
Ooh,
fine
I
with.
need
I'm not
to-
attached to that.
Real quick,
Ooh,
are you doing that in
compliments
OBS?
on your profile picture.
Oh, thank you. Are you doing that in your OBS with the little voice recognizer thing at the bottom?
Yeah. Yep.
That's awesome.
It's fairly new. I
Mine
saw
was
Anna, that
ridiculous.
Star Wars girl, have something similar. I'm like, I want to figure out how to do that. It looks really cool.
I want to figure out how to do that now.
Right? So my second question was, do we know if they have a lore guy? Like
I mean, Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson are executive producers. So I don't know how. I don't think they're deeply involved with the show, but I'm sure, like, in some
I'm sure they're
respects, the
deeply
lore
involved
and
in cashing whatever check they give
Right?
them. To
I
say,
mean,
yeah, that's exactly what we were
Steven
I
doing.
mean, as
Spielberg
much as
got
they
it.
were with the Dune movies, I would say, but
I don't know. I mean, Steven
that was
Spielberg got an
Villeneuve's
executive
interpretation.
producer just for saying, you should change this. And then that was it for Jurassic World. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like with Lord of the Rings, what was it? Power of the Rings? Whatever that shit
Rings of
was
Power.
on.
Lord of the
Yeah,
Rings,
Rings of Power. Their lore guy, you know, like an official, like, no, dum-dums, you're not supposed to do that. And then they fire them. Like, we're going to
Yeah,
still make
Tom
it.
Shippey. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know if they had that guy.
They've given themselves a lot of room, because this is the one. All right, so Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson, they ended their Great Schools trilogy. So basically, from that point through Jessica and young Baron Harkonnen and young Duke Leto, we've got 10,000 years of untouched Dune lore where they haven't written books yet.
Yeah.
So I guess they were, they were very interested
I'm sure
in
they'll
doing
get to it.
Yeah,
They're working on it.
it seemed like the creators were really interested in the proto sisterhood, like before they're really established as the Bene Gesserit. What I do like about the show is it does show that as soon as the Butlerian Jihad ended, and we've kind of gone into about 100 years of the Carino Empire, the humanity has gotten very comfortable with this level of technology they have. They've gotten very comfortable with not really having to advance, and it really, because that speaks to what Frank Herbert was trying to do with his original books, where he was sending the message about humanity getting comfortable, which we will do very quickly, is not good for the survival of the species.
Yeah.
So
Wall-E.
it is, when people are like, why would, like, these are the same shields we saw 10,000 years later, and I was like, that's exactly what Herbert was trying to get at,
Right?
that humanity had stagnated.
It's not a
Yeah.
Y wing, which just disappears by the time Last Jedi comes out. Anyway, but I do have a couple things. One, Chad, your love for Dune makes me more excited to learn more about it. That's a
Well,
compliment.
I know. Well, I mean,
a compliment.
I love Dune enough that I read all of the Herbert books, and I finally tapped out when they went back to the well on, like, Lady Jessica and all this. I was like, you already did a trilogy for this shit.
Also,
Yeah,
are we
but
saying
that
a
one wasn't that
butler
good.
jihad?
Butlerian, because
Named after Serena
Butler. Yeah, it was. So in Herbert's original version, and I think who was on Film Thread on Monday when you were doing it, was it Danica who was going off on this? Like, Herbert had a completely different explanation of what the Butlerian Jihad was.
Yeah, I think it was the Dune Encyclopedia is what she was referencing a lot, which was approved by Frank Herbert, but he didn't write. It was several writers, I believe, that contributed to that. But it was approved by him, so some think of it as soft canon. So I
So Serena Butler, who was engaged to Griffin Harkonnen. No, not Griffin.
These sounds like made up names.
Not Griffin.
Are
It
these in the
was-
book or are these real
Griffin
people?
was
Griffin is the main chick.
Griffin's
and this
the-
is brother, right?
No, Griffin is the grandson that is right before Valia. Whatever. Harkonnen 1.0 was engaged to Serena Butler. They had relations before they were married, and she got pregnant. But then she got kidnapped by the robots when they did a hit and run attack on one of the human worlds. She ends up being the personal slave of Erasmus, who was a independent robot, which was an offshoot of the Omnius Overmind. Bear in mind, people, this is the level of story you're getting with Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson. And to punish her because she was pregnant, and when she has her baby, because she was paying more attention to her baby than to Erasmus, he murders the baby in front of like her and the whole crowd, and that sets off a riot and uprising on the planet, and that becomes the first planet that was retaken by humanity.
So the robots weren't all bad.
Wow.
But I did have a question though. Wait, you said the robot guy was mad that she was pregnant. Did he have dibs? I don't understand why he was mad. Because he
Yeah,
kidnapped
that she was paying attention to the baby.
To
and
her-
not
Oh,
him.
okay.
Yeah.
She's supposed to be
Yeah.
cleaning him and taking care of him,
And
doing all the
actually
chores.
and talking to him, like he wanted to
Yeah.
use, and he's a very, if I had to use a historical analog, he's almost like the Marquis de Sade, where he was doing experiments in pain and all. Like he wanted to cover all facets of humanity, from intellectual to pain threshold. He's also what turns out to be the guy who creates the Mentats, because he adopts a human from like being a baby, because he's like, I bet I could raise one to be like a machine. And he teaches Gilbertus, who that's the name
to
of the
be
kid he
to be
adopts,
a Vulcan.
to be able to mentally do the calculations at the level of a
A
mainframe.
computer.
What? Come on, man. This shit's getting wild.
I mean,
Oh, it gets crazy.
Just now?
I mean, I'm cool with Homeboy turning into a worm eventually. Like that makes sense.
Yeah.
Of course.
well, that was the golden path. He
It
had to
made
do it.
sense.
Yeah. It's the sad, horny worm.
There's an
Yeah, Matt-
explanation for it. That makes sense.
It was hilarious because Elaine, when we were talking the other day, Matt was like, "So that last book was just him complaining about being a sad, horny worm that couldn't get with anybody." And I was like, "You boiled it down to some essentials, but that covers a lot of his
That's
crisis
pretty much it.
in the
Yeah.
God Emperor, because he was very sad he couldn't get with the girl he loved that the Tailaxu."
Honestly, is
Bred
a more
for him.
relatable character than almost anyone in the show, except for Travis Fimmel. He can do no wrong.
Yeah, that's actually what I liked about the episode itself was, and I released a video today, about my theory about Desmond Hart, because it surprised me, but there were actually a lot of ideas and themes that connect to the God Emperor, and a lot of the things that of Hart's dialogue reminded me of that. And when, especially in like the climax, the ending of it, he's talking about how even in the past it wasn't even consistent with the Machine Crusade, because here he says that men turned their thinking over to machines,
Mhm.
but now we've merely replaced the mode of control, alluding to the Bene Gesserit, which is mankind's tendency, and that's one of the primary themes of Frank Herbert's saga. And
Right.
the God Emperor's whole entire plan was to wrest humanity from those tendencies and to make them to the point where they could never be controlled ever again. And he mentions here that that kind of plan or whatever requires sacrifice. I forget his exact wording, but that's what he's telling the heir of
The
House
little boy.
Lucchese here, and it just really evoked that same kind of philosophy.
I
Oh,
think the
God Emperor.
difference is that with the Bedouins, the witches or whatever. It's
Bene
the
Gesserit.
illusion of being free and not having authoritarian oligarch, controlling everything because you think that they're just advising you and you're making the decision. It's that illusion that humans really want. They want to be controlled. They want to have that authority, but they want to pretend like they're making the choice,
Well, in Herbert's original version of the machine situation, that's what happened with humanity. It wasn't that it was overtly crab walkers with lasers herding you into slave camps. It was that they turned over all of their thinking to these machines
Right.
and ended up being sheep that were just like if you watched, I think it was by the 3rd season of Westworld, because Westworld went weird. I don't know. Elaine, did you stick with Westworld?
No.
No.
Okay.
I heard bad things, so I didn't
All right.
check
All
out.
right.
But I heard the first season was good. I needed
Season
to.
1 was great. Season 1 is almost perfect. But
Mm.
by the what I'm getting at is by I think it was I can forget whether it was the 3rd or 4th season, you find out that there's basically an artificial intelligence out in the real world that is using algorithms, phones, social media to push people to basically do whatever. Like it came up with the ultimate plan. It's running the world, and you don't even know it because it'll have a pop-up or an email for a job listing and all this stuff. It'll get people to do all the stuff it needs to do, planning 18 steps ahead, but nobody's aware they're being controlled. That's how artificial intelligence kind of would really, I think,
absolutely.
take over. And that's what Herbert kind of implied, that it wasn't an overt Terminator exoskeleton. It was just like, soft power controlling your actions.
Even more simplified, it's like Wall-E. Everybody just got lazy and let the machines do everything for them.
Yeah. Elaine, did you ever see
for them?
Did you ever see Raised by Wolves?
No,
Oh,
I haven't.
You're missing out.
Well, and then it got canceled, so I just didn't feel the.
Still worth it though.
But I hear it's really good, and Travis Fimmel was really good in it.
This
so I
is
need to check it out.
basically a crossover with that show because he is playing
the same,
almost identical. Which
I guess
is great.
that's why they felt bad for canceling the show. So like, hey, just bring your talents over here.
Hey Elaine, I intentionally didn't watch any of your videos on it because we were going to be talking tonight. But so what are your thoughts on Desmond? Is he a Gola? Is that why he was able to get past the Truesayer? Or
a lot of people think that's the case. There's really holes that you can poke in any theory. And for me, the only thing about Gola technology is that it's nowhere near this level. I mean, when Dune Messiah starts, which is when from Frank Herbert's books, that's when we see a Gola for the first time. The first Gola has metal eyes and is not able. It doesn't have his original memories. So that's the thing, that they're trying to actively get to that point. So it's a bit far-fetched for me to believe it. Apparently he has his original memories. That seems to be what's the way he's able to converse with the Emperor. So there's just some things that I don't know, but they're taking creative liberties, so I really can't definitively say no that it's couldn't be.
That's the weird thing, because it's a big point was it Dune Messiah, when they create the Duncan, Idaho Gola, that they finally figured out what would actually bring back the original genetic memory of the host.
It's a huge part of the storyline too, because that's the leverage that they were going to use against Paul.
Yeah, it's if you're trying to get it to take an action that is wholly antithetical to who they were, it'll trigger the flood of their original memories. In this case, it was they had programmed the Duncan, Idaho Gola. Gola is the term for the clone, Matt.
A Gola is a what?
Is a clone. Is a clone. Is a Dune Universe clone.
It's a clone made from dead cells. That's the difference. And it didn't have those original memories starting out. So it took the Talaxi were trying to create something akin to the Bene Gesserits, unlocking their genetic memory. So they're trying to create that version for themselves.
Yes. And so they find out that that's what finally triggers memories flooding in, which is why eventually Duncan Idaho becomes his own Kwisatz Haderach, because he's lived, by the time they get to Chapter House, he's like he's like a couple thousand lifetimes in, because what they do is they keep taking the cells from the next Gola that dies and recloning him, and then they awaken his memory, and he ends up having not just genetic, like it, unlike the Bene Gesserit or Paul and Leto, who have genetic memory going back, he has all of his memories from his own lived experiences, but it effectively becomes genetic memory going back thousands of years because of the generations.
But it's all him, not his ancestors.
Yeah, it's a pretty far out, very interesting part of the saga itself is the idea of genetic memory. It's very fascinating way that this book series explores that. So,
which is
but
another reason the lore is a problem, because
yeah,
if you have genetic memory, there's no unreliable narrator, because you can go back and remember what happened when it happened. Like,
I mean, but obviously when we see the footage, though, we're talking spoilers, right, of the episode, or
Yes.
Of the episode
Oh,
and
go
the
for it.
series
Okay.
at this point.
yep.
well, it's not a huge spoiler, but when we see the footage of Desmond facing off with the sandworm, there's just no way a person would have survived that. And just being in the vicinity of a sandworm is devastating. There's another thing too. How would you have recovered the body to create the Gola from? There's that. But I don't know. Yeah, that's what I like theorizing about. We don't know for sure yet, but I think that it's fun. It's one of the most intriguing parts of this episode and this character
Travis Fimmel
is you
always
can
is.
theorize against. It just sparks your imagination, and it could be any number of things.
So we have Face Dancer, which would again be about
Way
10,000
too
years
early.
too early for that. But Gola
Yeah.
is also 10,000 years too early for it to be
Yeah.
this kind of Gola. The other thing, because I don't think we can, since it's the Herbert Anderson version, take away the idea that it could be an AI like Erasmus type, robot,
Mm.
Yeah,
artificial intelligence.
There's a lot of clues here. So yeah, I did a video today that of my theory, and it's a pretty crazy theory. I admit, and you can poke holes and everything, but it's the most fascinating to me to theorize on is that he has some connection, whether he knows about it or not, to the God Emperor. Like there's some connection that he has to him because he keeps obviously the sandworm was a clue in here in connection to this character, and he views it. He has like a spiritual awakening since that incident. And the one of the scenes that was pretty dramatic for me that I really enjoyed was after Desmond meets with the Emperor, just first time we see his character. After he meets with the Emperor and Kasha, his truthsayer, Kasha just flips out. She has this nightmarish vision, and there was something going on between them. Like she was having difficulty reading him at first. So there's something there that has possibly a Bene Gesserit like connection.
Almost
Or he has
like
a
a
block.
failed,
I think he has
like
a
a
block.
failed early Kwisatz Haderach.
Yeah, like a
Like
lot
he
of the
overdosed
things
in the worm.
Yeah, maybe. And when he talks about that experience of his presumed death and survival with the Emperor, he speaks of it like like being reborn spiritually.
Yep.
He prays to have the strength to feel nothing, which is to not feel fear. His fear dissipated, and he became something new. That feels a lot like what happens when a Bene Gesserit goes through the Gom Jabbar test or the spice agony
I-
ritual.
Yeah.
Yeah, just they
I
reach
think
a
he
different
may have
level.
I think he may have Ray Palpatine the truthsayer. Like when
Well, it's
you know
I know, but it's very reminiscent actually of when Paul kicked, with Helena Gaius, whatever, when
Mohiam.
Mahayam, when he basically shouts voice to her, and like when she's trying to get into his head, where he Benny Gesserit's her, and she falls, like she has like the breakdown.
yeah.
There's
just like
also
in-
the element where Herbert mentioned there's a, in terms of prescience and genetic memory, there's a zone that women can't access, which is the male line.
Mhm.
And so they're very
The
like
place they dare not look.
and so there is the implication when the Emperor's truthsayer is having her vision, because the way they're laying it out, it reminds me a lot of when in the Lynch version you were seeing Paul go into that trance and see like going into space and seeing all that stuff. It almost could imply that, and then they get to, now they made a kind of machine sound, but you saw the
Yes.
kind of two blue on blue looking eyes, which could be the God Emperor. It's a weird.
Yeah,
It
I
could
don't
go
like
either
that it's
way.
ambiguous like that, that you could interpret
Yeah.
it either way, and I feel like they did that on purpose. They wanted to be vague so that whatever part of the Dune fandom you're from, that you would still find something to latch onto or theorize about. I wish it was more clear. To me, it still only makes more sense for it to be a vision of the God Emperor or a vision of the place that they dare not look because they are terrorized by it. They are repelled by it. And it felt to me what I was thinking of in that moment was the line that Paul says to Reverend Mother Mohayim at the end of Dune. Try looking at that place you dare not look. You'll find me there staring out at you. And during her vision, that scary vision, it reminded me of that.
I thought
Yeah.
that Desmond was actually forcing those visions onto her to get her to leave so that he could have the ear of the emperor. Like he planted.
Making some space.
Well, he's undermining the
Yeah.
Bene Gesserit.
Yeah.
Now that's a whole other
his
theory as
goal.
to how he did how
Yeah.
he burned her alive
I
from
did
across
see
the
Quinn's
universe.
idea that maybe it was Ixian technology.
Yeah.
Oh, you think it's
Well, it
technology?
had something to do with
possible.
the kid, right? Like he even told the kid, like, your sacrifice will not be in vain. So what happened to the kid had to happen in order for what he accomplished.
Right, but it
But
also
I think
happened to her.
he probably intended that to always happen to Kasha because she had the Emperor's ear, and
Mhm.
he from the outset wants to destroy the Bene Gesserit. So I
Why
think
did
from
he
the very
need the kid
beginning.
to make it happen? That's the part that I
Well,
don't get.
I don't think that was necessarily true. I think he had decided to only kill the House Richese until after the Emperor said,
Yep.
if there's a way to get me out of this wedding, then yeah, that'll make me a true believer. That seemed to be the impetus for him to take action.
Oh.
Well, that and
So-
it
Like,
also
so he was just killing two people at the same time?
Yeah, how it's connected to why this happened at the same time, it's I don't know.
yeah, not
So
sure on
I-
that.
Nothing
But
in the
also
lore
under
kind of really makes it make sense.
So yeah, I loaded up kind of a screenshot of some of the like images you see when she's having her vision. This is the
Okay,
daughter of
pause.
the
Before
emperor.
we keep going into that, though, it might have just been bad presentation that it looked like the two events were somehow correlative. And it's just they showed them at the same time. So that created a thought process that wasn't supposed to be there for me.
Well, that's bad filmmaking.
I think it was pretty
then.
intentional that those scenes were right there.
It seems
And-
like it. Like, it seems like they have to be connected somehow
Yeah, they both die in the exact same way.
Yeah.
at the exact same time.
I don't see
But-
how it could be. I think I might tend to believe that it's some sort of technology more than, but I think again they're trying to make it either way. They're trying to make it ambiguous as to you could think that it's psychic kinetic powers or telekinetic powers. I don't know what the proper term is for that, or some sort of technology.
Pyrokinetic?
Yeah, so there, so it makes sense. I mean, because he's
Psychic.
touching his forehead in the room with the kid.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
doing the
also he was
Charles
only in
Xavier.
the same room with Kasha, but he did look back at her and he was clutching something like a black cloth in his hand right before he had that audience with them. So you could theorize that he did something then, and that maybe it also triggered when he was like a slow timer. I don't
Well,
know,
he's
slow
definitely the
timer.
trouble starter, the
Yeah.
pumpkin instigator.
Well, to be honest, I would prefer it be technology of some kind, because if they're just going to introduce new superpowers that are
Yeah,
never seen anywhere
I
else,
agree.
I'm not going to be happy with that.
I agree
Do-
with that. I don't think it makes
See, that's
sense.
what leads me to think it may be related more to because knowing the absolute end game of the Herbert and Anderson version of Dune, which is
Omnius.
Omnius is still
Yeah.
around, Erasmus is still around, and he ends up merging with freaking Duncan, Idaho, to create the fusion of human and technology.
Do you think Desmond is fear addicted? Danger Illustrated?
Are you still doing the lyrics? Okay.
Yep. I didn't get any recognition.
No, I recognized it. I just didn't acknowledge it. So-
And I was going to bring up the other way that it undermines having the kid killed by him also undermines the Bene Gesserit plans, and that
Yeah.
that was the next thing in their genetic,
From,
combinations.
what's her name? Valia, whatever her name, the
Valia,
one that looks
'cause
like Gary Oldman in
princess.
Dracula.
Can
Yeah,
I
actually,
make one minor gripe, and you guys can correct me if I'm just way off, but it seems to me that the modernity bled through a little strong with them being like, we're gonna make the first empress, and I was like, I didn't think they gave a shit who sat on the throne as long as they controlled them.
No, Dune is very patriarchal.
Well, I mean, eventually their plan is to have the Kwisatz Haderach be in the imperial throne. That he is going to be. That was their original plan. It didn't work out the way they had wanted, but that was the original idea because that was. But still, they were going to be controlling this individual. But Paul came, or Lady Jessica threw a wrench in the works there. So all of their careful planning, they couldn't control Paul in the end. So all of their original plans just didn't pan out.
yeah. So the original plan was
Maybe
Jessica would have a girl, that girl would marry
because-
Fade, and the
And
child
their
of
offspring would
Fade.
be.
It's
And-
probably bad writing then, because I mean, any woman can tell you that it is a hell of a lot easier to control a man than another woman.
I mean, and this individual was supposed to be like a believer in the agenda. You could kind of think of Count Fenring as something like that. That he was a part of their breeding program, and he was aware of it, and he was fully supportive of it. And he knew his wife. Obviously, she's a Bene Gesserit. But he was a failed Kwisatz Haderach, so they had like multiple different avenues of
Multiple branches.
things, and but yeah, that was his priority actually. Even though he assisted the emperor and was his closest advisor and friend, his duty to the Bene Gesserit agenda superseded that. So, because he believed in it to that degree.
So this is the dream sequence where we see the blue.
Yeah.
See that, like you said, it's ambiguous. You could, since we saw at the very beginning the way they did the machines, that they also had like blue centerpiece eyes.
Mhm.
You
And
know,
the
well,
lizard
even-
toy,
Even
Yeah,
the
and
toy,
and the lizard toy.
which I didn't
So
like.
yeah, so but it's shaped
Whatever, dude, I
distinctly
want
as
one of
it was
those
cute.
lizard toys. Those things are cool looking.
Yeah, I thought it was cute.
Actually, I did think that it looked really good as far as the CG, but if you're trying to convey like how scared people are, how taboo even the simplest of devices are at this point in society, I just thought it was a weird way to do that with a toy, because you
Yeah.
think that people would want to use. I mean, people would want to use more practical means of technology to actually like assist them, and it seems that would be.
I
You know,
think they were
yeah.
I think they were going for the idea of like, oh, we're so rich and hoity-toity. We just have little AIs. The rules don't apply to us.
Well,
That's only for the gross
The
poor people.
Rashasians are pretty rebellious.
yeah. Well, the Rachesi and Ixians are the two tech planets within the Dune universe, with
Closest thing to technocracy.
with Rachese being the one that tries to play within the lines, color within the lines, and the Ixians being the ones who like F it. We're gonna build whatever we want as long as we don't get caught, we're okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
What-
Go ahead, Elaine.
I feel like this show is just trying to do too much.
Mhm.
It's a very mixed bag for me, the premiere episode, and I think it's because they're trying to do Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson lore. They're trying to tell their own stories, so they're not shackled too much by the perils of adaptation, while also holding true to Frank Herbert's established ideas. And I feel like they're kind of not doing a great job at any one thing. It's a lot of there's a lot that doesn't work for me in this first episode. Unfortunately, I think it's watered down by the scenes that I feel just don't really belong here, which is the young adult
The nightclub.
nightclub scenes.
Ugh.
Did the
So
nightclub,
sweaty.
and then
Oh,
like
yeah.
they're doing the blow before they go in, and I'm just like, I don't
like
need
I
to
was-
know that these guys party. I
Yeah.
don't care.
No,
I
I feel like I was
drug-
watching two
drug-
different shows. It just
drug
didn't feel like it
use is-
belonged.
Drug use is pretty heavy in
But-
Dune.
Yeah,
Oh,
but they
but
made
not
it
at a
so.
nightclub.
But they made it so obvious that these two were banging anyways. We didn't actually have to see
Casual.
them.
It's always been more of a ceremonial thing from what I've seen.
What
I
banging?
mean, that whole scene looked. If anybody watched Caprica for the 8 episodes it was on. That
Yeah.
scene was straight out of Caprica.
Yeah,
That
it was
Yeah.
very generic. You could attribute it to any number of like sci-fi kind of dystopian-esque. That's why I didn't
Yep.
like it. It didn't
At
feel
this point,
Dune.
I'm mostly invested in Travis Fimmel and Mark
Hell
Strong.
yeah.
Like the rest of the show pretty much spent its entire time losing me, and then all the shit that kind of hit the fan at the end brought me back.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to see what happens next.
Yeah,
That's what Travis
same with
does.
me. I feel like I didn't really get invested until Desmond Hart showed up, and there was some really intriguing and drama there. But
This is eyelid work. His acting with
but I feel
eyelids.
like general audiences, I don't think they would have made it that far. It was a bit of a slog to get to that point, and yeah,
Yeah, I was watching it today, and Chad's like, "You got to watch it. This is gonna be the first hour of the show. You got to watch it." It took me all day. Like I watched about 15, 20 minutes, and then I walked off and did some other stuff, and then a couple hours elapsed, and I'm like, I gotta go watch the rest of this thing. And I watched like another 30 minutes, and then I walked off and did something else. I finished it up at like 4 or
Yeah,
5 in the afternoon.
I watched the Desmond Hart scenes and the Emperor scenes and Kasha scenes like in isolation because that for research for video, and
Mhm.
it was so much better without all that other stuff.
Right?
Yeah, like this scene right here is probably to me the most interesting one when he gets delivered the actual footage, with Hart on Arrakis, coming face to
Yeah, that
face
was
with the
great.
sandworm, and then seeing the sandworm come at him and all this, and then the smoke and sand comes up, and
It
he's
looks so
like,
good. The
yeah,
show
Very
actually looks
Jonah and the
really
whale.
good. The sets and costumes and CGI, top notch.
The aesthetic is right there with the movies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Travis
Mhm.
Fimmel.
Maybe too much so. I feel like that's been a huge criticism actually is everything looks the same. So if
But
it's supposed
that's
to be 10,000 years and I get that too that there is that level of humanity has this tendency of stagnation.
Yeah.
I do feel that there probably should have been a longer time post machine war, as they say, because this basically upended all of civilization and interstellar civilization, and they have to restructure, they have to rebuild from the ashes. It makes sense to me that it would take longer to rebuild society to a stable position, and then also you have to focus in the institutions that are uh, doing these advancements in human abilities, which to me it makes sense that it would take generations. But so I understand why people have that kind of gripe about it. I think it makes sense for just the course of history and civilization to have some time,
I
go
still
by.
don't understand why we're not, like, what their problem with putting mentats on a screen is, because mentats should be becoming more available than even the Bene Gesserit for a lot of these things. Like,
Yeah, they are the human computers.
yeah, they're the human computers. It would be like a house. Most houses wouldn't have a truth sayer at this
Oh,
point,
that's
but
the
they would
Asian
be
doctor
getting
guy.
no, that's the
no,
soup.
that's a Sook doctor.
Oh,
It's
It's the guys with the stained
with
lips.
the same, yeah.
They're like Data.
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Only fully
They-
human.
Yeah,
I mean, and even more so, they're not just. I think even the movies they made it seem like they were just simple calculators, because you only saw Super Howard doing one calculation, but he was the Mentat master of assassins. He was a master at strategy and analyzing copious amounts of data to make theories and to use that data to reach conclusions, and that's how they strategized in this feudal society. So that they were very indispensable at this time, especially to
So
the
he was
great
like-
houses.
He was like C-3PO. He was like, the odds of surviving a direct assault on an Imperial Star
Yeah.
Destroyer are approximately 450,000 to 1.
yeah. I mean, that's what the mentats' job is. Because remember, after the Butlerian Jihad, they get so freaked out by no, thou shalt not make machine in the image of man, right?
And
Every
that's why
time you say
navigators
that-
exist. They can't
that-
chart courses through
Yeah.
technology. They need navigators to do that.
And we're effectively using their own books. We should only be about 30 years into Chome existing, and the Navigators existing as their own guild.
Yeah, and we got no Spacing Guild in the
Like the
first episode.
Spacing Guild should be. This is. I mean,
I just
it's
want to say Navigator. Is that too much to ask?
yeah, it is.
But that's the problem with doing a spin-off show from movies that chose not to really include the guild or the Mentats. The show has to do its own thing. It can't sit there and introduce every portion of the Dune world.
But that's the opportunity. Like you can't do a long form show.
Bring all that stuff in than a movie.
And because if you're going to do the Bene Gesserit, if you're the counter to the Bene Gesserit are the guild, right? The spice must flow. We don't give a shit about like your plans for genetic, perfection. We're doing
right, but
this.
you've only got 6 episodes to do this. I mean,
Yeah,
but
there's
I don't
not enough time to introduce every element of Dune that they decided to just throw on the cutting room floor in the movies.
But the problem is these elements are so essential to the lore.
Well,
You can't
I get
take
it.
them out.
I feel like there is a way to have done this as far as because that's what I wanted from this show too. That this is your opportunity to expand upon the things that wasn't touched on in the movies. And I feel like, I mean, the Butlerian Jihad is a huge thing, and it was just in a conversation between Reverend Mother Mohayim and Paul. It just a few lines of dialogue that they cut out that could have helped the viewer to know why mentats exist. Why do these things exist the way they do? Why does the universe operate as it does? So I feel like if they could have put those lines of dialogue in this show, that would have, instead of trying to insert Brian Herbert's lore into everything, and that it could have made it much simpler. And
well, I mean, the
Mission
Emperor
Crusade
showed
They're
up
trying to
on
make it
tap.
too big. It's an issue that, like, HBO especially, ever since Game of Thrones, everybody's trying to copy it, and it's like everything's got to be the biggest, baddest, most insane, crazy story of all time. It's like, maybe, since everybody knows what Dune is already, you spend the first season just building out the world,
I mean, I thought I did
introducing
until I
things
heard
that your
Chad.
standard reader wouldn't see, and then you can, if the first season is successful, then start getting into the meat and potatoes of a deeper story. But just start out with giving us more information.
Well, to go to what
Yeah.
Elaine was saying, like think about the Butlerian Jihad. We're talking about a thing that was so influential. It ingrained in intergalactic society, mind you. It influenced and dominated their way of thinking for 10,000 years. Until the God Emperor came in and ran everything, nothing overruled the Butlerian Jihad. Like if they caught you doing any kind of machine stuff, you got executed. Like this stuff was still happening 10,000 years later.
Say that, Mad throws off his headphones and gets halfway through his house before he realizes, oh, he wasn't talking about that kind of jihad, and comes back.
No, well, I just hear Alfred going, Durka Mom Jihad, Mr. Wayne.
Yeah,
Because
I
of-
just wish they'd handled the lore how lore dumps. Has there ever been a successful one? I know David Lynch's movie did that huge exposition, and
That's why
it's charming,
he didn't want it. Like so his version of Dune only has Virginia Madsen just giving like the real brief one. It's the TV extended cut where they do the actual like mixing in the footage with the guy narrator talking about the Butlerian Jihad. He took his name off that one. So
Okay.
it was interesting.
Here's a thought, right? And maybe some people tell me, nah, this is wrong. This won't work. But the Halo animated shorts, the Matrix, their little animated shorts,
Animatrix.
yeah.
like there's
love
an
the Animatrix.
opportunity there for something like Dune, where the Navigators make a self-contained little story about the Navigators, just that gives people that lore dump, but while telling its own little self-contained story. Then go over to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing.
You're advocating
one big 6-episode story.
So you want an anthology show?
Yeah.
Set in the
Bring
Dune
in Ward
universe
Jones
instead.
Jr. He can be
I
part of the
think that-
video game.
I think this is the test show to see if they can spin off more shows about the different areas.
But you
Real
don't start a
quick, though.
test show with a
We'll see.
big, long, sweeping narrative. That's the problem. They try to go immediately to Game of Thrones season 8. They forget that everybody hated season 8. They liked the first 6 seasons.
Davina
And-
with the Navigator series is called Dune. Where's my car?
Oh, that's not bad.
And also, I disagree with just the entire foundational kind of thing they have going on with the show, which is the Valia and Tula Harkonnen, these characters from the Sisterhood of Dune book. You know, they introduce young Valia, and I feel like in the first few minutes, they presume that we know and care about this character when
We
the
don't.
audience doesn't know who this person is.
Couldn't
And
give a
when
shit.
she uses the voice for the first time, it is the first time someone's ever used this. I feel like it should have been a much more dramatic scene, and it just felt really underwhelming and flat. And
Anticlimactic, yeah.
Well, and
Yeah,
then the other lady's like, I'm never going to bend to you. It's like, you just saw what she can do.
Right?
Yeah.
You could have just said, sure, I'll bend to you, and then
Yeah.
stabbed her when you got
Well,
close enough.
if you
She
read the
literally
books,
came up on that. She came up with that shit on her own, just hanging out in a room. Like, I wonder if I could control people if I talk in a deep voice. Like,
Well,
what the fuck? Who
yeah.
thinks
Right.
of that?
so she was one of the first Reverend Mothers, so she unlocked genetic. Anyway,
yeah,
and if you read the book, and not that I like these books, I think that's clear.
Is
that
it?
was keeping true to the character, because she was supposed to be a fundamentalist, like,
Right,
so
but
she wouldn't bend.
this isn't based on the books, Chad. This is inspired by them.
True.
If
This
somebody
one
does
is-
something really stupid, we can undumb them with
no,
the show.
but the flashbacks are literally scenes from those books, so I think
Right.
you're kind of locked in.
And there's going to be more flashbacks in the next few
yeah.
episodes.
I don't like flashback shows like that. I
Nope, hate them.
That's why I don't like prequel shows to begin with, but especially ones where you keep flashing back. Like I think Arrow. I don't know if you watched Arrow from the CW and kept doing
you
that.
went back 10,000 years. Why are you
Yeah.
going back even further?
I just feel like it's doing too much, and I feel like if they just focused on several main character storylines, focus on the present,
Focus
I
on
would have been
Travis.
fine with just that original storyline, and through conversation, you can reveal these aspects of those characters' past. Like you have to make us care though about the characters immediately. You have 6 episodes. You don't have much time
Well,
to do that.
What's sad is I think all they thought they had to do was say her name was Harkonnen, and that established, and that's all. Which is lazy.
I feel
I
like
think
it's a
part of
Dave
this is on the
Filoni.
actors, though. I mean, because Travis Fimmel, he comes on, and I'm immediately invested in everything he does. I'm like, hey, this is our hero. I'm on board.
I think Desmond
Yeah.
Hart was the only hook the show has at the moment.
Yeah, because he's
Pretty
trying
much.
to take down the Bene Gesserit. We don't like the Bene Gesserit.
Mm-mm.
So yeah, that's the only like really interesting thing there. That
I mean,
It's
Emily
hooking me at
Watson
the
is a
moment.
bona fide like grade A actress. She can act really well if given good material. She's
But yeah,
been
but she
around-
showed up thinking, oh, this is Dracula.
yeah, I feel like they should have gone the route of when Frank Herbert established his universe with the first book. We experience the world. We're just thrust into this story in Paul Atreides' shoes, and through his journey and through his conversations with each new character we're introduced to, we learn about the world and the universe and the socio-political landscape. We learn all of these things gradually through Paul's journey. I feel that they should have done that. They should have
Mhm.
maybe have started with Desmond Hart, maybe like show him on Arrakis, because it's the crux of the Dune universe. Show him originally on immediate action and mystery to have that initial hook. And then if through his introduction to the Emperor, then we get his perspective on things. And then with the Emperor, we get the Truthsayer. And through the Truthsayers, we can then learn more about the Bene Gesserit and their plans. Like there could have been a natural progression of lore that wasn't so just lore dumpy and just such a
But-
slog in the beginning.
Yeah, but also
You know
boring.
what would've
They're
been
trying
the
to do
perfect
so
way to
much.
kick it off, right? Like the recording, right, with the thumpers and the worm coming. Just open it with not that recording. Open it with that actually happening.
Yeah.
Matter of fact,
Mhm.
before
No,
you
that's what I
even-
meant.
like before
Yeah.
you even fade in on him, hear the thumpers. Just
Yeah.
start the whole show with
I-
black
that would have
screen
been
Well,
awesome.
and the
I
thumping.
think part of it, and this is kind of, I think they just didn't want to be on Iraq. I think they wanted to do something Dune that wasn't on Arrakis for once.
Yeah. Disney
Which-
kind of
That's
ruined
Well,
sand
doing
for
something
everybody.
Star
glimpse
Wars
it,
that isn't
though.
on Tatooine. What the hell?
That's what I just said. Disney ruined sand for every show and every movie.
But we are getting into the end
Well,
of the time that
but can
Elaine
I-
was kind enough to give to be on the show. So I don't
Oh,
want to
geez.
get her locked into giant lore because she's nice, and I think she would stick around as we like debate these things, even
I
though
do have
she's
one
got
last
other
question for her.
obligations.
Yeah.
Do you
Go ahead.
honestly think that they would have focused the show on Desmond, on Travis Fimmel? There's no way, because your idea is awesome. You know, you see his journey to when he has that Jonah in the well type moment with the worm, right? It builds up, and then you introduce the witches, whatever you want to call them, and you get the butlers or whatever. But there's no way
The
that
butlers.
they would ever have him as the actual focus. We're lucky to get this half-assed two-hander as it is.
Honestly, I feel like he is a main character just as much as Valia
Right.
is. He's
That's what
his
that's what I was saying.
presence
It's
is.
like a two-hander. Like
I mean, he's
Yeah.
definitely got main character energy.
I just think that would have been much more appealing to general audiences to start out with that action, to start out with such a huge connection to the movies,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
establishing Desmond Hart on Arrakis and having that show the attack, the insurgent attack, and then him accepting his fate, cut to black, and then maybe like the next scene you cut to the emperor or something. Like I just feel like there could have been a natural progression of introducing all of the because that's how the story of Dune is. It's huge ensemble cast, but they're not all introduced at once. It's a natural progression that's gradual, and through conversation we learn more. It's not just everything all at once. It's not so jarring to you.
so voiceover, like when
Yeah.
I was a little girl, I learned witch shit or whatever. I forgot how she started.
Well, that's actually so on the way out, I'll just throw down my cards. I think he's going to be an AI or robot or some kind of thing because that sequence where they did the flashback to the Butlerian Jihad and fighting the robots is absolutely unnecessary unless you're going to have a robot overarching villain.
What, like Terminator
So-
Salvation?
Exactly. Yeah, because
God dang it,
it doesn't
yeah.
work unless they
I
do that.
mean,
There's no point to giving that story real estate because giving that Butlerian Jihad flashback means nothing if you don't call back to it with them being a villain later.
Well, it also spoiled the end of the
I just-
Butlerian Jihad if you were ever
Yeah.
going to do a show out of it.
oh, no. Well, I don't know. We'll see how this show performs. If there were that many to stick around after the first episode, I'd be surprised.
Only for Travis.
Unfortunately, I hope this doesn't give a bad impression on Frank
mad.
Herbert's saga that it's boring, because I've heard that a lot about this pilot episode. Even though there were some really interesting things, I think it mostly appealed just to Dune fans specifically that could find those gems and be entertained by it. But in general audiences, though, I felt like it was just too inaccessible at that point. And I hope it just doesn't give a bad impression that Dune itself is boring, because it's a very fascinating universe, tons of really, high concept sci-fi, philosophical sci-fi you can really sink your teeth into. So hopefully it doesn't it doesn't turn people away from it. But I don't know,
I think it
there's
just
things
has
that
the
interest
same
me, but
problem a lot of shows have these days. I think about probably at least 30 minutes of that hour plus episode could have been left on the cutting room floor. It
Yeah,
wouldn't have hurt anything.
nightclub scene will be the first to go if I was editing
Yep.
that.
All right. So,
But
thanks
thank you.
again for coming. You're welcome anytime if you want to hang out and talk Dune if this show doesn't completely.
Yeah, it was
shit the
really
bed.
fun nerding out on Doom with you all. Thank you
So,
for
It
having
was
me.
nice.
And in
It
the
was
chat
nice
too,
streaming
shout
with
out
you
to
again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
chat was very happy for you to be here. So
Nice to
thank
meet
you
you,
for being
Elaine.
here.
Well, thanks again.
All
And
right.
see you next time. See you.
All right. Thanks for coming. Bye.
Now we can
So
get
that
back
was-
to the boys talk.
Yeah, with your very transy avatar. Your avatar would not be allowed to use a congressional restroom.
I was so disappointed. I was like, oh no, he has a
Point out
new one.
Stupid thing I did. Just a little fun thing I did, right? Like I pulled up the Dune Prophecy season 1 cast, right? And I'm like, okay, 1, 2, 3 guys, 4 guys, 5, 6. 6 guys in the cast. Now, girls. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14,
It's
15,
about a
16.
sisterhood of witches.
Yes. So Slender, the original title for this show was
That's why they focused on this.
hold on. When it was greenlit, it was called Dune Sisterhood. They changed the
Ugh.
title to Dune Prophecy. So I don't blame them when they explicitly greenlit a show to be about the Bene Gesserit that it
But
has more
that's
women.
why they're not focusing on Desmond Hart, because they want that kind of skewed statistic on the cast. They
Right,
want
even
as
though
many
the
women
better
as they
show-
can.
Even though the better show would be about Travis. Also, when Stretta and I were
Probably.
watching it, I was like, oh boy, female director, oh boy, female writer, oh no. And they just he just kept like, oh man, at every level.
Well, to be fair, and this is what I'm gonna.
To be
where's-
fair,
To be fair, because it doesn't. It's having a male creative team doesn't guarantee you making something good as
Of course
myself and Slender
Statistically,
experience.
It improves your odds.
But
Also
last night, me and Slender went and saw a movie that had an all male creative team, writers, director, and it was
It was
not
a terrible
great.
fucking
Well,
movie.
It
hold
was
on
not
now.
good.
Let's be fair though. Wait until the director's cut, because if you remember Kingdom of Heaven,
That
people
ain't
had
gonna
a-
make it better. I'm telling you right now.
Which is crazy. This is crazy to me that it is certified fresh.
Matt,
This
to,
is-
to give you a little bit of insight. I'm gonna tell you one thing,
okay.
and you're gonna understand where I'm coming from. There were at least 3 moments in the theater where I thought to myself, "Fuck you, movie."
No, it's not a what the flick level movie.
It had moments.
No,
For
it's
instance,
not.
Mad, if you filled up the Coliseum
Right,
with
you wanted to do
aqueduct
Waterworld stunt show.
with aqueduct pumped in water from the mountains,
Mhm.
if you put a saltwater shark in there, would it be cool? Do you think it's going to be
What-
happy?
Well, did they put salt in the water?
And then would
No,
you
it
ask
doesn't
yourself-
work.
Then would you ask yourself, how the fuck did they get the sharks in there in the
Well,
first place?
Hold on, was it a river shark?
It was a bull shark. It looked like.
Bull sharks
It-
can swim up
Boom.
freshwater
They can.
waterways.
They don't like it. They can exist in brackish water.
They should have gone with crocodiles. It would have been more realistic. and
Crocodiles would have made more
more
sense.
true to what actually happened in the Colosseum.
Well, actually, alligators, because crocodiles aren't they saltwater?
No, crocodiles live in the
There are
Nile
saltwater
River.
crocodiles.
Yeah, there's saltwater ones, but there's river ones too.
Mhm.
And
in
Rome would have had
Egypt.
easy access to Egyptian crocodiles from the Nile.
Yeah. The shark
Uh,
thing was stupid.
What did they
Yeah.
jump it?
Oh, by
Eric
the
is-
way, spoiler alert!
Eric-
Spoiler alert, everybody!
Yeah, I mean, no, they show the sharks in the Coliseum
I
in
never saw
the trailer.
I didn't see one. In the
Anything
trailer.
that's in the trailer, I'm saying is fair game. Like giving away the fact that he's Lucius is in the trailer, so we can talk about it.
No shit, right? They
Oh,
retconned
Jesus.
that. That pissed me off.
Davinia with Banda jokes tonight. You see this?
The sharks were a little salty about being evicted from.
It would have been better with sharks with frickin' lasers attached to their heads. True.
Fuck yeah,
true.
dude. Or like the poison darts, like they're in Katrina with the dolphins. Y'all remember that?
Oh, they did. No, don't. They did poison darts. We'll get into that too.
Oh no, but not all attached to dolphins though,
No.
because that really happened during Katrina. They were at the military base or whatever. They had dolphins and they had these things attached to their head that has like these poison darts that they can launch or whatever, and they got loose during the hurricane. This really
Okay.
happened, and they had to put out warnings like, "Hey, if you see a dolphin, don't go up
This
to
was
it."
Some weird DARPA experiment.
Well, because they use a lot of that for like ocean fucking bullshit spies or whatever. Like I think Iran bought a whale from Ukraine at one point. That was part of their navy. It's all real things that happened.
So now we're
Yeah, I
doing
have
Sequest
some
ESV
serious
in real life.
Davina, I have some serious complaints about the CGI in this movie because it was it wasn't good.
How long is this gonna go? I'm gonna leave before you guys ruin this movie for me. I like Ridley Scott.
You
Uh,
liked have you liked some of the stuff he's done recently?
Kingdom of Heaven director's
he's
cut
Kingdom of Heaven was like 20 years ago.
yeah, that's
holds
not
up.
recent.
I know, but I'm asking you.
But
It
it's
is
not
in the span of
recent.
Ridley Scott's life.
I said recent. Like recent is not 20 years ago. By the way, when I told my son, he was like, "Where are you going, Daddy?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm going with Slender because that's his name, so that's what I call him
That's
to
what
the
we call me.
movies."
Yeah.
And he's like, "What are you going to go see?" And I was like, "Gladiator 2." He goes, "When did Gladiator 1 come out?" And I was like, "May of 2000." He's like, "Why
24
did they
years
make?"
ago.
He goes, "Why did they make a sequel 24 years later?" And I was like, "I don't know. We're going to find out." And the answer was,
I
"I
still
still
don't
don't
know,
know."
even after I watched the movie.
Okay, how about Exodus, Gods and Kings? That was 2014.
And you like that one?
Okay.
Yeah, it
You're-
wasn't bad. The Martian,
You're
2015.
within 10 years now.
The Martian was 10 years ago. I don't mind Covenant or Prometheus, to be honest.
He didn't
I
direct.
don't like
Oh wait,
Prometheus.
you're.
I said I
you
didn't
did-
mind it, Chad, because
you-
like
you
you don't
did-
like Dune books.
I don't like the Kevin J. Anderson and Brian Herbert ones, and I feel bad that I felt obligated to read them.
Okay,
Well,
well,
I enjoy
first
them
off,
just in a different
I'm-
way than I enjoy Frank Herbert's.
First off, I'm looking at these numbers, and I am disappointed in both the audience and the critic score.
How long
I
is
think
this gonna
they are
go?
way too generous. Probably 20, 30 minutes.
Okay. Guess Brahma, text me when you guys are done because you haven't looked at your text yet. That I sent
Yeah, I
you
have.
like an hour ago. Oh, okay.
Said
We're
I'm
just
out
not
of sync and
responding
my
then.
volume's low, but I can't do anything on my
Said
volume.
more than that, and I even made an NSYNC reference. Whatever. I'm out of here.
Well, Matt is going to transition off the stage with his avatar, so we're good to go.
All right.
All right, so the three of us who are left have all seen Gladiator 2.
Yeah.
If the chat is worried, I'm going to put up a little warning that we're because I think
Spoiler
I
alert.
think half of them saw the spoilers last night, so or heard the spoilers last night. So
let's do this. All right, so this is your cue. You've got you're going to have about 10 seconds. I'm giving you a fair warning because I know it takes a little bit of delay to catch up. We are about to talk spoilers beyond what was in trailers. All right, let's go ahead. This movie was a piece of shit. It bothered me.
Baboons? Really?
All right. The CG on the baboons, which was all right. So the first gladiator fight Lucius gets in is where they're in a basically the minor league arena on the outskirts of Rome, and they release hopped up, drugged up monkeys and baboons, some to attack.
Shoot with darts.
Yeah, that they were shooting with darts,
With
and
blow
he made
darts.
but the CG on them was terrible.
Yep.
So that it really took me out of that scene. You can't really feel the threat when the CG on them is that bad.
They looked like Lion King baboons. They looked fucking weird.
And I told Slender it made me
Well, they were
think of
shaved.
when I watched the first Gladiator was great. It was obviously I went out and got it on DVD. I watched all the special features. I remember seeing all the behind the scenes stuff where they had real tigers on set and were
Yep.
filming with like real tigers doing the stunt work when they were shooting this, the fight scene in that Gladiator, in the first Gladiator, if you remember Maximus versus the retired champion, where they had the tigers, coming on there.
Yep. Oh, and they CG'd everything in this too, not just the baboons. Like every animal that was in this was CG'd. And you could tell with all of them.
The
Sorry,
storyline
it just pissed me off.
What's funny, Slender, is I looked at I saw it on Drinker's review, and he said this, and I had to look it up. This one is shorter than the first Gladiator by a few
It
minutes.
didn't feel shorter.
No, it felt like
long.
it felt really long. It felt bloated. It wasn't paced very evenly. So, I mean, Brahma, why don't you? How about this, Brahma? What did you like about it?
What did I like? I was not bored during the movie. I mean, what I said last night was, if you're going to compare it to Gladiator 1, of course Gladiator is going to absolutely destroy it. 25 years later, a lot of people that are going to see this probably didn't hold Gladiator in the same esteem or haven't seen it. as far as gladiatorial fights, it was kind of cool seeing the, the water flooding in and doing a sea fight, because they did do the sea battles. I agree the sharks were stupid. Like I said, it should have been crocodiles. Um, I thought all the fight sequences were pretty fun. I liked the initial opening battle. I thought the story was a bit too Star Wars to Force Awakens, like you had said, Slender. It was a little bit too beat for beat, but by the end they kind of diverged a lot. It should have. There's about the 30 extra minutes in there where it's like, all right, now we're done with Gladiator, and now we're going on to a political intrigue type thing. I thought Denzel Washington was the worst part of the movie by far. I don't care about the CG. I thought Denzel Washington refusing to use anywhere near a dialect or an accent that everybody else in the movie seemed to be using to at least a degree just stuck out like a sore thumb. He may be a great actor and it may have been a be but it was out of place in this movie.
He was miscast. He was horribly miscast.
Well, I mean, it's possible that so he's cast as an actual person who I believe was in Africa or Numidia or some one of the areas over there, and he actually became Emperor of Rome for 1 year, or Emperor, yeah, but he never visited actual Rome. He was the
Denzel did Denzel.
Denzel did very Denzel. There were things I liked about it. I didn't really care for the two retarded emperors either, like Critical Drinker didn't. But it was funny watching them show one of them have syphilis and his brain rotting, and trying to elevate a monkey to consul. But Paul Mescal didn't quite do anything near what Russell Crowe did. Pedro Pascal was really inoffensive in this. I'm tired of seeing him, but he didn't do anything bad in this movie. He didn't overdo anything. He was just average Pedro Pascal. I don't know. What's her face that plays Lucilla still looked great. I don't know why they didn't just use the kid from the original Gladiator. He's still an actor. But I was not bored. I enjoyed it. It was popcorn flick type movie, not epic historical, saga like the original one was. And as long as you can separate the two, I realized they used the same name and some of the same characters, but they're two different kinds of movies.
See, but the movie is
I disagree.
It's as a sequel. It's not just a spiritual sequel to Gladiator, which you could have done. You could have totally done just another Gladiator, an actual unknown Gladiator, whatever. They're going direct sequel. They're using Lucius and they've retconned it.
You could have done a sequel with a spiritual successor with a couple of Easter egg type nods where you see Maximus's name on the wall or you see his armor somewhere. But like Chad said, this is a sequel. This is supposed to be continuing the story of Gladiator.
Yeah, but if you were going to do a true, really do a sequel to Gladiator, at this point, it'd be a $500 million expense. And they're operating on what, 130 million?
No, this was like 300 million.
That's not the numbers I heard on it.
Let me look it up because I'm pretty sure I had seen it. Gladiator 2's budget is above $300 million.
Yep. And they couldn't even afford real animals.
The last reporting says that it's allegedly $310 million. After it was initially budgeted at 165, it ballooned through production to 310.
Okay.
So ridiculous. So you're basically doing the numbers it was too expensive. It was a direct follow-up to Gladiator 1. So all this stuff where you're like, it's a popcorn movie. Even though it's not going to hold up, then they should have just completely separated it out. They are dependent, Paul Mescal's character, Lucius, is supposed to, now we've retconned it, so he's the fucking son of Maximus, which doesn't make any sense because they make it very clear in the first movie that they weren't related. But somehow Maximus now knew that it was his son, and that's why he was fighting for him, which is stupid because it actually negates it negates his sacrifice, to save her and her son, as like basically where he was like, look, I experienced it. My wife died, my son died. I'm not going to I don't want you to die. And it was more noble that it wasn't because it was his own kid.
Well, I think that's probably the most retarded part of the movie is that Lucilla just lost track of where Lucius is. I mean,
She sent him
he's
away.
the nephew of Commodus, and yet nobody seems to know who he is or where he is.
That also didn't make sense either, because he's supposed to be around 12. He's old enough to understand. His mother said, I need to send you away from Rome because people will try to kill you. We get one flashback where he was in an African city in hiding, and Romans came to kill him and burned down in the village, like that town, and killed everyone there trying to get him. And somehow he blames his mother for abandoning him when exactly what she said would happen happened. Like, what kind of retard is this kid? Like, where he's like, Mom abandoned me. Why? She said I had to go away or people would murder me. Why weren't you in the town she sent you? Because people came to murder me and murdered everyone else.
Yeah. Well, and then the heel turn on like, I hate you, and then 5 minutes later, I got over it. Like, oh, okay. That was easy.
I will say this, and me and Slender both talked about this. The most surprising thing for both of us, I think, was that Pedro Pascal was good in it.
Yeah, someone who I have never liked. I have thought him the most overrated actor in the history of acting. And I actually kind of liked his performance in this one.
He actually had
he didn't have to do a ton.
Well,
No,
he
he
wasn't in
didn't.
it that much, but he did have, I think it was a lot of like show don't tell kind of acting where you had to
He was
see on
very
his face,
expressive.
where you had to see on his
Yeah.
face how disgusted he was with what he was being forced to do, and he did it pretty well. Like, so I just give him credit for I mean, he was only, I think his screen time in this movie is probably around 18 minutes.
20 minutes, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
18 to 20
and
minutes.
aside from the visual spectacles and things that we've complained about thus far, like when you really get into the core of the writing, this is terribly fucking written. Like a great example is when he first encounters the twin emperors and he laughs in the face of one of them and begins reciting this poem for no fucking reason, mind you. Like I do not understand why he decided that was the route he was going, but he did. And then in the very next scene, when it's the morning and he's fighting in the Colosseum, the emperors are like, isn't that the one we saw last night? And they start reciting the poem, and you immediately see recognition in his mother's eyes. But then, even though she's a good actor and we saw that, and that should be enough, she then finishes the poem that they can't remember the lines to. And that's still not enough. Then we have to have a scene where she goes into Lucius's old bedroom and sees the poem written along the fucking wall. And that's not enough either. Now we have to hear her read it aloud from the wall. And that's not enough either. Then she has to grab the little worry stones that are in Lucius's room and have a flashback hearing her talking to Lucius about the poem. We fucking get it.
Well, as to the first part, why he said it to the emperors, I think, was because everybody kept calling them barbarians. So he was proving that he was an educated person.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I get that. Like I said, the part that pisses me off is that like you can never just trust the audience anymore. Every time you watch a movie or a TV show nowadays, you can practically hear the writers going, "Huh? You see what I did there?" Huh?
Well, they had already given it away anyway.
And then also when he stabbed the guy in the neck with the wooden sword and said, "Steel or wood, a point is still a point." What writer thought that was a good fucking line? I fucking hated it. I hated this movie.
I didn't nitpick it as much as I usually do. I kind of had fun with it. I like the battles. I did not like that. I did not like that basically he became a champion after like 3 battles. But that also seemed to have gone to the state of Rome after the past 16 years of these idiots being in charge. Everything was a bit run down and poorer.
Oh, and then at the end, when he got saved by literal plot armor, like he's wearing a boiled leather chest plate. And somehow the sword bounces off of it 3 or 4 times, and they make this sound where it's like ting, ting, ting of metal on metal. I'm like, that chest plate's made of leather. Like, that's
Not
not
the horses.
what the fuck.
The horses are metal.
He just magically hit the horses perfectly every time. And a sword with a point wouldn't slide off the horse embroidery and go through the leather part. Come on, man.
Well, that's what they were showing. So,
Yeah, I mean,
it specifically shows him stabbed down directly onto the horses like 3 or 4 times. So, yeah, may not be
And the
realistic,
ending,
but it
and
is
the
a movie.
Fucking ending. He picks up stones from the fucking thing and goes, "Father, speak to me." And the clouds are moving, but I honestly thought he was going to have a Mufasa fucking moment. And you were going to see fucking Maximus appear in the clouds and go, "Simba." I mean, Lucius.
Well, I mean, Disney
the
owns the right
fuck?
to James Earl Jones' voice, so that wasn't going to happen.
I hated everything about this movie. It was terrible.
it was all right. So if Gladiator didn't exist, and this was just kind of a standalone movie where you take away some of the direct sequel elements, it would probably be
kinda
like
crappy.
it would be like a 6.
That's
Yep.
what I gave it, was a 5 or a 6.
But because it is a direct sequel, this is like a 3.5, maybe 4, just because of production value. But it just bothered. No, I just can't take away. It is when you go that direct the sequel, like you're directly continuing the storyline with him now being the son of Maximus, bringing back the original character. And we're not even talking about how they did Derek Jacobi wrong, just killing him like it was nothing.
Yeah, I'm
Slender
sorry,
Thor.
but if you go from
Yeah.
like iteration 1 to iteration 2 and you change a bunch of shit, that hurts your score. And that's what they did with this.
Yeah, Soul Assassin, an unnecessary movie 20 years too late.
Yes,
That
that
would
is
be
exactly the case.
that'd be the one sentence description of my opinion on it.
The only thing this movie accomplished was it made me want to watch Gladiator again. Just to, fucking try and scrub this from my brain because it was so angering.
Apparently, it accomplished getting somebody $300 million for doing stuff. Like it's now, I will say, like the Roman sets and things looked very nice. The costume design was great,
Visually, it was amazing.
Yeah. But
Um,
the CGI was a problem. The
CGI sucked.
So CGI baboons bad, CGI sharks bad, but practical effects stuff like the actual like armor of the
trireme battle.
gladiators. The trireme battle wasn't. I mean, aside from the sharks were stupid.
Right.
Like,
We've all agreed on that.
I get, yeah, it's jumping the shark. It's, but the
Well, it
trireme
was
battle
unnecessary anyway. I mean, you get shot with an arrow, you're already dead. Why do you need to get eaten by a shark?
I mean,
But whatever.
if you could have successfully brought sharks in, saltwater sharks, to put them in a freshwater Colosseum battle scene and they would be alive, I can see why Romans would probably find it entertaining. It just isn't, to my understanding, freaking possible. So
Yeah. The other issue I had with Denzel Washington's character, not the way he acted it. I already went over the way he acted it, but his character is pulling strings through the whole movie.
he gets
trying to
weird
get himself
at,
into
like,
position, and then at the end he just becomes an idiot.
yeah, the last act. This has been a theme for movies the last 8 months for us. Going back
first
with
and second
Alien,
act, not that
Something to
bad. Third act
Yeah.
falls
So we're
apart.
just gonna make the characters act completely out of character to get us there.
he goes from being a methodical Godfather type character, like a Michael Corleone, to being like an idiotic, like, I'm gonna just start shooting arrows and doing stupid things. I mean, none of that worked. The fact that he's ostensibly recruited the Praetorian Guard to be with him.
Well, he's
So
the
why-
second consul, so he's
Yeah,
in charge.
Well,
So
you
why
shot
in the
the guy's
F-
mother? Why not take the second shot and deal with him too?
So he's all right. So he's running the Praetorian Guard. He rides away from them instead of like staying at the head of them and being in charge, because he's basically, what was it, 5,000-6,000 guys would effectively be his bodyguards when that one gladiator, quote unquote, is chasing him. He could have just turned the Praetorians and said, kill him. you know, like I don't care how good he is, you know, when an entire phalanx turns around and tries to murder you, you're gonna get killed one versus a phalanx.
Oh,
Why did he?
can we also address the fact that they did Senator Gracchus really fucking dirty in this movie?
Yeah, we
That's
just
Derek
did.
Jacobi. That's who I was talking about. Well,
Oh,
I
did
used
we?
his
Oh,
I used
I
his
I
real
was
name.
Used
looking
his
up the
real name.
character's name.
I used his
I was
real
like,
name
what was
because
his name again?
Derek Jacobi's been playing Romans for like 50 years because he started with I Claudius.
Well,
He's
and
been
the
doing
fact
it
that
ever
he
since
was
then.
such a critical character in the first one, and in this one, they had him standing in a couple of scenes, and then they practically killed him off camera. Like you got to see
Well-
an uncensored camera version of him getting his throat slit for no
But
reason.
you could say there are reasons for that. You could say it's because the Senate has lost all of its power. He's really not an important character at that point. The whole thing is about the emperors have gotten too powerful. The Senate is essentially disbanded, even though it's still technically meeting, but they're just being told what to do. So from when Commodus was there and starts to disband the Senate, where the Senate still had actual power in Rome, the senators have fallen that far in 16 years that he's just not that important anymore. You
I
may
get what
not
you're
like that
saying,
as a
but-
character in the movie, but that may have been
Yeah.
the theme they were going for.
Like I get what you're saying, but like then you shouldn't have even had him in the movie. Like
I
the fact
wouldn't
that you
have,
brought
because
him
he was
in, he should have
ancient
played
in
a
the
more
first one.
he should have played a more important role if you were going to bring him back. Otherwise, don't bring him back.
Well, he was kind of what tied Lucilla to everything. Still,
Supposedly. I mean, I don't know. I feel like they did him dirty.
I would have liked. I mean, the biggest issue with the sequel portion of it, in my mind, is that everything that happened in the first movie really didn't matter, because somehow it still got turned over to these two idiots as the emperors.
Which they never explained. Like, how the fuck did
No,
they
they
get in
didn't.
charge? Like,
Yeah, so in the like after Commodus, if you know the Roman history, you generally had commanders of legions vying for like for becoming emperor. Like when you had people successively becoming emperor, it's usually because they had some kind of power base
Military
to install
power.
them. You know, like the
Do you
crazy
see any military following either of these idiots?
No,
though?
that's the thing. The crazy, like they weren't direct descendants of Caesar. That's what Nero had going for him, and some of the in Caligula. So the crazy emperors doing crazy shit just because they were that kind of went away, and it became more who was the like Denzel's
Who was
character
the
was
military
actually
power?
was a better like a better version of what happened with emperors going forward, where it's somebody who could usurp power and control enough to take on the consul or then emperor role in Rome. So it's like, but twins who are completely batshit crazy, who have no military prowess, like there's legions aren't going to be loyal to them. So that didn't make any sense. Like
Power of the
it's
purse.
but they didn't have money either. That's for 16 years. Like I can't think how long was Caligula's reign. Was what, like 4?
I don't
Yeah.
know, but the first movie and this movie are not historically accurate in anything except for a few names. So I'm not that worried about that part.
I'm not terribly concerned with it. I just think they were poorly written characters.
Because there was a Lucilla and there was a Lucius also, but Lucius died before Commodus. So, I mean, none of that has anything to do with it. Lucilla had died long before that. There was a Macrinus, there was a Geta and a Caracalla or whatever his name is. But, I mean, none of these things are in sequence of what actually happened in history. It's not historically accurate, nor is it supposed to be. So, I don't get my head too wrapped up in that part of it.
No, I don't either. That being said, Brahma, I don't know why, but you've been a slideshow all night.
Really? I mean, Mad said it was out of sync, but it's not doing anything on my back end. But I'm not watching.
Maybe
the
it's
actual
on
stream
my
either.
end, but your camera doesn't really move for me. Like basically what I see is a frozen picture of you. And then every once in a while, it'll shift to a new frozen picture of you.
How is it now? Well, give it a few
It's
seconds.
moving fine.
Yeah, now it's moving.
Every time
What's
I
that?
come into the StreamYard, it tries to turn on the touch-up setting. And I think that jacks up my camera.
Are you saying StreamYard's like, we don't want to show you? Can we clean you up?
Yeah, pretty
you're,
much.
you're that ugly. Kind of
Exactly.
like
Alright.
I'm that loud and obnoxious. So every time I turn on my computer, Windows tries to turn off my microphone.
I think
Yep,
we can kind
it
of
does
move
that
on
to yours.
from
All right, so I'm
that
texting
one.
Mad.
Well, we got one last topic, but yeah.
Well, he just
Yeah, I
has
got
to come
nothing else
back
to
when
say
we were
about
done
that.
with Gladiator.
I didn't. Yeah, if he's cool, we're going to talk about the Game of the Year awards and how stupid some of their choices are.
Dude, these game awards are something. They're something.
So we'll start with is this, there's 6 nominees, is this right, for
There
Game
are
of the
6
Year?
nominees
That's what
for
it looks
Game
like.
of the Year, and I disagree with. I fundamentally disagree with 3 of them, if I'm honest.
Yeah, we got Astrobot, which sure, it's a good platformer. I've heard nothing but good things. So
I don't disagree with Astrobot.
we've got Balatro.
Balatro. I disagree with Balatro. I understand it is an incredibly popular game. Everybody who plays it fucking loves it. They say it's more than just poker, which is fine and dandy, but it's still a fucking card game. And the whole point of Game of the Year is it is supposed to be the pinnacle of what games can be right now. And I mean, look at the graphics. Balatro is an indie game made by one dude. I'm sorry. It might be the pinnacle of an addictive card type game, but it's not a Game of the Year. It's just fucking not.
All right, then we got Black Myth Wukong. I think everyone agrees that one's
That's the Game
probably
of
a
the Year.
solid,
That's my
solid
Game of the
nominee.
Year.
Yep. Now here's where I know Slender has very specific feelings.
That's not a
Elden
game.
Ring, Shadow of the Erd Tree.
Yeah, it's
As
not
a
a game.
DLC can't be a game. If you have to buy a base game to play it, then it's not a Game of the Year.
Yeah, I can't play Shadow of the Erd Tree if I don't own Elden Ring. So no. If you
Although
really want DLCs, make another fucking category. But it's not a game.
Although its quality is Game of the Year quality.
It is. Oh no,
I just
doubt
don't
it
agree
is.
that a DLC can be a Game of the Year for the same reason
Agreed.
you do.
I mean, it's expansion / DLC of the year, but it's not
Expansion,
game of the year.
DLC. If you want to do seasons, cool. Like additional content of the year. How about that? Make an additional content of the year section.
And then now this one is another one where this is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which
It's the
Is
second half
technically-
of a game. It's a sequel
yeah.
to another game, so it's a new game technically.
It's not a sequel. It's a remake.
Well,
When they made Final
it's a
Fantasy VII
sequel to
remake,
remake.
yeah, but here's the thing: it's not. Like, have you played Final Fantasy VII?
I'm not saying it's a sequel to Final Fantasy VII. I'm saying it's the sequel to the remake of Final Fantasy VII. It's the second
Which is
game
more,
of the series.
which is more of a remake. It's still a remake, and a remake shouldn't be Game of the Year. I'm sorry, it just
a
shouldn't.
remake. A remaster shouldn't be Game of the Year, but a remake is a different game, so I think that should.
I don't.
It's a
I mean-
different genre. I mean, it's an action. It's an action RPG instead of a turn-based RPG. The story's different, same elements in some places, but it's not a remaster. It is a remake, so it is a different game, and by definition.
I mean, I know that it's different. I've played remake. I haven't played Rebirth because I'm not playing it on the fucking PlayStation. But like, I don't know. I still don't think it's Game of the Year worthy. I really don't.
Well, that's
Like,
a
if
different
you-
argument.
If you want to top out this as like the best RPG of the year, sure. But it's basically we're going back and we're telling a different version of the Final Fantasy VII story. But it's still the Final Fantasy VII fucking story.
Well, it's the third or fourth version,
Exactly.
but
Like, I'm sorry.
I mean, that's a
don't
different
think that
argument
rises
than you
to the
started
level of
making.
Game of the Year.
right, it may not rise to
No,
Game of the Year, but my argument was a remake could still be a Game of the Year if it actually was the quality of a Game of the Year. I don't think the centerpiece
it
of
is.
a 3-part game is worthy of being
I don't
there.
think regardless, I still don't think a remake rises to the quality of Game of the Year. Like
The qualification or the quality, they're two different things. Qualifying as a new game or the quality for Game of the Year. Those are two different things.
the quality. I don't care about the qualifications, like, except for the fact that it specifically says that this represents the pinnacle of the creative and innovative and what a game can be and everything else. And what's creative about remaking something that was made 20 years ago, 30 at this point?
But that seems to be going back to qualification, not quality. Do you see
Right.
where
I
I'm
don't,
where the
I don't think
distinction
it
I'm making
reaches
is?
either. I don't think it reaches either level, dude. Like, I don't think a remake ever reaches that level, because you're basically just going, I can't come up with something new, so I'm gonna make some changes to something old and call it new. And on top of that, like, when I bought Final Fantasy VII, I got the whole fucking game. The remake, apparently, I got to buy 3 fucking different games just to get the whole game that I had when I bought
At
the
least
original.
3, I think.
Yeah, like, I'm sorry, this is not Game of the Year material, not at all.
So, are we moved? Should we move on from Game of the Year, or
So no movie remake should be considered for Best Picture? I don't know. I don't know what their qualifications are. I don't know what they lay out as this is what defines Best Picture.
Well,
Like,
for Oscars,
I'm
it's a whole
sorry,
bunch of
Shifty.
different
That's like an
things now.
apples and oranges comparison at this point. Like, I don't know much about movies, nor do I care about their awards. But
all right? So we can all
I do
agree
care
that
about games.
if it's just a straight remaster, which is effectively just up-resing the graphics to a new generation, those shouldn't be eligible because they're just taking the same game.
Right. That's
And
my argument, is a remaster is different than a remake. Remasters should not ever be anywhere near this.
Oh, and Eric, yes, my argument absolutely would apply to Battlefield and COD.
I mean, Battlefield and COD are essentially the same engine and game for the last decade, and they just
They haven't done anything new for
Yeah.
30
I mean,
years. Like, they
I
haven't
mean-
done anything new since Modern Warfare.
it'd be like seeing a Madden game on the list. If I saw a Madden game on the list, I'd shit a brick and be like, "This is stupid." Madden should. It's just a skin. It's instead of buying Madden every year, like somebody we know, is essentially just buying a skin pack to overlay on top of the same
with Call
game
of Duty at
from
this
the
point.
previous year.
I think
I
I
mean-
compared Call of Duty to Madden earlier today.
Well, Call of
But
Duty.
yeah,
at least
College
there's
football
different
25
maps.
is a whole new, like, they haven't done a college football game in years. So I will say that that one would be probably a little different because college football is a different type of game than professional football. So there's going to be different elements in there versus a Madden game. And they hadn't, I mean, Brahma, like college football, like the EA hadn't done that for like 15 years, right?
No, I don't know. I stopped playing
Yeah.
football games.
Mad
back in
would
Madden,
know.
like 95.
Yeah, so Mad would know if he comes back. We'll know
and
that.
flipping on that too, right? Like, I agree fully with 3 of the award nominees, and I vehemently disagree with the other 3. That's a 50-50. We're not off to a good start.
And Blacksmith was by far the best game out of those.
Best game direction is essentially
I don't know.
the
I've
same.
heard really good things about Metaphor.
The same, like, best game direction is the same list: Astrobot, Balatro,
Which is fucking ridiculous. Like, once again, I know I'm going in hard on Balatro this time around, but like, how do you say that game has best direction when it was made by one fucking guy? Who was he directing? It's not like somebody needed
The
to have an
story?
overall vision of this project and steer everybody else to make the best possible outcome. It's one fucking guy.
You're just one guy. Yeah, it is hard to make the argument you had to direct anything. I mean, it is pretty impressive that you were able to do it solo, but I do think that, given the description here, awarded for outstanding creative vision and innovation in game direction and design, it does kind of involve or imply at least that you're running a
fucking
team.
card game. So it's not even like it's an innovative game design. It's like, okay, you took poker and you added some crazy fucking elements to it to make it awesome. That's cool. I don't know if it's innovative.
I haven't played it. I haven't seen it. Don't know.
It came out in like January, February. It's extremely popular, but it's one of those super addictive games that you play
Okay.
it for 10 minutes and then realize you've been doing it for 2 days.
Can you guys
Yeah.
tell me, is this a remake, Silent Hill 2?
Yes, it is a fucking remake.
So here's my problem with this then.
Yep, shouldn't be nominated for shit.
I think Brahma can probably agree that like best narrative, which is like best writing and for a game,
Yes, Eric, it's Balatro the poker game.
you should probably be able to disqualify a remake from that one because
Right.
it's essentially this. You might do some new stuff with it, but you're using the same story that was already laid out for you.
Well, so far I would go Black Myth for Game of the Year. You could do Elden Ring's DLC for Direction of the Year because it was a whole nother portion of story that with completely different level, completely different design than what the first game was, as far as they had verticality thrown into it, a whole bunch of new features that haven't made.
I'm going to disagree on Black Myth though. I mean, if that's your personal game of the year, that's great. I don't think it wins game of the year, and I don't think it should. I mean, don't get me wrong. We both love ourselves some Souls likes. Most people don't. That does not have broad appeal. It really doesn't.
That game did huge numbers in the first few months.
It did. I'm not arguing with you there.
A lot of people.
I'm not arguing with you on the fact that it did huge numbers. It's of the games that are listed for game of the year, it has the lowest rating. Like, and that's still like an 80 something %. So I'm just saying, I don't know that it has
lowest rating by who, just so I know who you're talking about, because it was a Chinese game, lots of people, critic wise, were throwing it under the bus.
No, I went and looked up the I like the metric, the Steam rating, right?
Okay.
And Steam put it at like 80 something %. Most of the others were 90 plus. Now I can't compare the Sony one with the little robot guy, but I heard that was super fucking popular. I kind of think that one's probably going to take it because it has the broadest, most universal appeal.
Platformers are an underrepresented game group too. It's nice to see because that has been the most highly rated platformer to come out in a long time. To see it getting some respect.
Now, was it PS5 exclusive?
Yes. That's why it's also probably played by the least amount of people.
Right. I don't know. I don't know most of the other games that were in the category. Black Myth would be my personal one. I think the storytelling and the visuals in that game were fantastic, and then the gameplay was, outside of Lies of P, closest to being a tight, controlled, Souls-like game.
Well, and again, the thing you've got to remember is Souls-likes don't resonate with most gamers. Like,
yeah, but
you got to be a hardcore to like those kind of games.
PS5 exclusives don't resonate with most gamers anymore either.
No, they really don't. I don't disagree with you on that. I'm just saying, I think that one has a broader, especially when you start considering like who the jury is that they're trying to hide, because the audience only accounts for 10%. Hey, Mad, welcome back.
Hello.
Hi, Mad.
That was a big high energy return.
Yeah,
shit.
I don't want to tell you what I've been doing.
I don't want to know then.
You keep that stuff to yourself.
I may have started writing a rap song about Dune.
Okay.
I think you'd like the Telexu.
But yeah, for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth on that, like that shouldn't be on best narrative either, because once again, this is us twisting an old narrative.
So I did want to throw this out. It just came to mind. Did you see this news, Slender, this week? that Kadokawa.
I didn't hear that Kadokawa had approached Sony themselves. I heard Kadokawa was possibly being purchased by Sony, and they do have controlling interest in From Software, which is a bad fucking situation.
So the reason it came out now in the last, basically yesterday, that the reason Kadokawa approached Sony is because Kakao, which is a Korean company, is trying to hostily take them over. And allegedly, some people who know things about like people who were very anti-Sony buying them said that Sony would actually be a better fit than Kakao. So I don't know. It seems like it's in a bad spot.
The problem with it is if Sony ends up taking over Kadokawa and they now have a controlling interest in From Software will not be allowed to do their own thing ever again until the end of fucking time. And we will suffer for it.
Souls-like we've seen with other studios getting gobbled up by the major studios.
Are they the ones who made Elden Ring too? I mean,
From Software is all the Souls.
From Software did Elden Ring, Dark Souls, Demon Souls, Sekiro, Bloodborne. They did fucking Bloodborne, and look at how well fucking Sony has capitalized on that franchise.
Yep.
I would actually,
Then they did your mech one. What is that one?
Armored Core. Armored Core is fucking amazing. I love it.
Yeah, I'd be more
I'm
concerned
a Steel
about
Battalion guy.
Yeah, I'd be more concerned about the anime implications too, because Kadokawa like owns so much.
I'm concerned about that too, but I'm more concerned about the games.
Yeah, they're too big on fan service.
Are you trying to suck us into what you were talking with Lit? That was the worst video, by the way.
Oh, and you know that dude was talking shit about Lit, right?
Yeah, I saw that you were mentioning that because I was like, I don't know, but I see plenty of stuff that gives very. I mentioned it a few times in chat. Like this dude was complaining about like how fan service is not happening. And I was like, they just did a show called Gushing Over Magical Girls, where a girl like trapped girls and was like smacking them on the ass. Like it was all in the regular broadcast in Japan, and it was on High Dive here. It was like like fan service is alive and well.
Well, okay. Now I'm going to come in argue this in good faith, because what he actually said was that it's dull now, not that it's not happening, but that it doesn't get him erect like it did back in the 90s.
He basically said the fan service isn't fan servicey enough for me anymore.
Right.
Like, I don't want to see girls' boobs bouncing around. I want their shirts ripped entirely off. Like, I don't want to see like part of the boob or the under boob or their shirt kind of be off, or like you need to get rid of all that mist in the hot spring scene. Their shirts need to get ripped off. Like, this guy was like, yeah, fan service needs to basically just be porn now.
I want to see someone's stepsister get stuck in a Stargate. Like, oh no, stepbrother, I'm stuck in a Stargate.
It sounds like this guy feels like all fan service should lean casually Brahma instead of.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
It was like, I think there's definitely not enough tentacle in my fan service. That needs to definitely be, up to at least 20%.
And I'm the opposite. If there's too much fan service in an anime, it makes me uncomfortable and I don't like it anymore.
So for Brahma and the rest of the non-weebs out there, when fan service is said in this context of anime, what it actually means is the horniest shit you've ever seen, but in a cartoon.
Okay. I think you're describing something that starts more with an H than what they would be doing in more anime stuff.
But that's what his whole video was about. Like, the definition of fan service wasn't like, oh shit, he said the thing. It's more like, oh, her boobs bounce now.
Dude.
Every time I checked in this morning, it was just about harem stuff.
Not this dude,
the H stuff, but the harem stuff.
Well, this dude wants regular harem anime to turn into H stuff, is what he wants.
He's like, it's not going far enough, and it's like, dude, there's a whole market for that too. You're just not looking in the right place, apparently.
I mean, Japan caters to all kinds, so I
made it into a game this morning. Every time I heard "Let's see," I took a 1 minute break.
I didn't even notice it this morning.
Actually,
Anyway.
Rama
he didn't do
noticed
it. He didn't do it.
Rama
very
made
much.
me notice it. He ruined the whole show for me.
Yep. It was
He didn't
actually
do it
one of
very
the.
much today.
It was a really good stream. Well, we had a great third guest on with us.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, the one that talked 3 times.
He may have
I
talked
figured
after
it
I
out,
left.
like, because I saw the DMs, like, you were like 3 times, and I was like, what the hell does he mean? Oh, he's talking about that.
Oh my god.
Gotcha.
Brahma, do you remember this one? I forget who it was. It was a
Imp.
political guy who, when he was sharing his like tab to try to like own people, they saw that one of the tabs was like an H site with tentacle content. And
You're not talking about Voss, are you?
No, it was
That was
like
horses.
No, it was like it was a political reporter. And then he tried to like his excuse for it was, well, we do this thing at my house where we have to tell my wife something, and then if she doesn't think it's real, we prove to her it's real.
Wait.
And he thought it would be better to say like at the dinner table they were trying to prove to his wife that
That wasn't Ted Cruz. Was it?
tentacle H stuff was real.
Yeah, I
Who
don't
was it?
remember that.
Oh,
one.
that it was. It was Kurt Eichenwald.
Oh,
It was Kurt Eichenwald, yeah, because he was the guy who also sued a Twitter person for allegedly causing him to have an epileptic seizure because they responded to one of his tweets with like a flashing light gif.
So-
Well, they're not going to
Oh.
like our flash bombs going off for the next 4 hours.
Soul Assassin and maybe Shifty, maybe the only two that ever heard me talk about Andrew Miller, who was this guy. He came to us halfway through a deployment. He was the dude that tried to correct a Navy SEAL, which that went great. One time, so the internet, this was 2006, right? So getting internet in Baghdad wasn't the easiest. You know what I mean? You're not just hooking up to the Wi-Fi. You got to run cables and shit. And the guy that we do a lot of stuff on MySpace, like lining up bitches when we get back. Anyway, but he left on R&R or whatever. So Miller, we're like, hey, can we use your laptop or whatever? He's like, yeah. Give you an idea of this dude. He could sing Sailor Moon both in English and Japanese and would do it on command. He brought his GameCube so he could play his Pokemon to war. And he would at night walk around like, anybody want to play Risk? Right? But it was like Risk 2445 or some dumb shit. It was like robots. I'm like, well, no, nobody wants to play. Anyway, so we finally get
Risk, yes.
his laptop hooked up, and his homepage was crossdressers.com. Now, this was combat arms. We were scouts. It can be very, like a lot of testosterone.
I mean, that's just normal now.
Right? But yeah, but we were also very open-minded. Patrick, one of my brother, he was a black gay goth. Like there was nobody that didn't hate him. I was gonna fight with a chick on 6th Street because of him. Anyway, some bitch was like, "Oh, you're tacky." I was like, "Bitch, you're tacky." I did with a black leather jacket and a brown purse. Anyway, it was a whole thing. But so
That is
it wasn't
tacky, though.
It is. It wasn't that big of a deal, but they're like, "Yo, man, he's in your squad. Like, you could go talk to him." I'm like, "All right, fuck it." I'm like, "Miller, what the fuck is up with your homepage?" He goes, "Oh, I just like looking up, fucked up shit on the internet." You don't make it your homepage.
You don't make it your
though.
homepage.
Yeah, I'm like, what?
Unless
goes-
the virus did it for you.
He goes, "Well, to tell you the truth, Corporal, I wasn't a cross-dresser. I am a cross-dresser. It's all I ever think about unless I'm playing my video games. All Pokemon video games, dude."
Is he pulling a
Well,
mash?
Well, I guess if he's still in the army, he got
This-
promoted.
Oh yeah, he's probably sorry, Major Baba now. This
It's a
motherfucker.
fucking general. What are you talking about?
So our chow hall was only open twice a day, and so we were out at night, and if people were out past curfew, we'd hook them up, take them to the biff, whatever. I'm sure they weren't sent to like Guantanamo or anything. I'm sure they were fine, but they had
It's a long trip.
24-hour chow hall though next to where we dropped them off, right? So we'd pick up anybody because we were hungry. You got to clear your weapon before you go in. This motherfucker with his M4 that he has had in his hand since fucking OSIT, since day one of training, he could not clear it. It was like he's just seeing it for the first time. And some sergeant grabbed it from like, "That fucking shit," because he was starving my chicken strips. And so Slender he'll understand this. So they did the only thing that the army would do. They gave him a saw, a 249. You're not familiar with the saw? That's an LMG with a drum magazine. A little bit more complicated than an AR.
little bit.
So I'm
Mhm.
gunning in that
Um,
Humvee. We're going out, and this fucker's our goddamn dismount, right? And I'm loading up my shit. I had the 240, had my M4, had the shotty, had everything. I'm loading everything up. Everybody gets out of the vehicle except for Miller. And I look down. I'm like, bro, you gonna load that shit up or what? He goes, I can't. I don't know where my rounds are. I went, sorry, Will. Did you hear what this stupid motherfucker just said? Like, no, what he saying? I fucking kicked him. I was a little bit more aggressive back then. Fucking kicked him. I was like, fucking tell him what you did, what you said. He goes, I don't know where my rounds are. Someone goes, what the fuck do you mean? It's not a bag of peanuts. We just watched Snatch the night before. It's not a bag of peanuts. It's a fucking drum magazine. How do you not know where it is? So we had to fucking put a regular 30-round mag in it until we got back. We walk into his room, and in unison, we go, it's under your fucking mattress. How do we know that? It's a drum fucking magazine with a twin mattresses laying on top of it. He's the stupidest motherfucker I've ever met.
So you gave him a 240?
No, 249.
Oh,
That's the
okay. I was gonna say
5.56,
because
yeah.
a 240 is an open bolt weapon. I don't know if I'd give
No,
a guy
no,
like
no.
that an open bolt weapon.
No, 240 isn't. It's belt fed. 240 Bravo?
Yeah, but it fires from the open bolt position. Like that's one of those ones where if you pull the fucking charging handle back and let go, there's a chance it'll light off that first round.
True. In fact, that did happen to our Bradley with the 240 Charlie.
Yeah.
Now
you gotta ride the charging handle back to starting position.
Yeah, fucking dude. Our fucking James almost
there's your visual aid.
249, yeah. So James, our Bradley commander at the time, he almost fucking lost everything. But luckily, when the armorer looked at it, there was some piece in it that was broken that could have caused it. Now, did that happen when Mankata and I took it out of the Bradley and slammed it against each side of the Bradley before we got down the ramp? I don't know. I'm not an armorer. I just know that it turned out okay.
Matt is reinforcing my beliefs on the need to overhaul the army.
He corrected it. All right, we got to go play. I'm not going to tell the Navy SEAL story. But if you think that shit that I just told you about him was dumb, wait until you hear about that.
Oh, that's
Called
a tease. That's
Yep.
a tease, people. That's a tease because Matt is probably going to be with us next week. He should still have his needs met for at least through that week. So
another one, mad stories involving anyways.
Hegseth isn't enough. Yeah, all right. So we're gonna bring the show to a close today. We had a good one. It was fun. It was nice having a guest on and doing
Even though it was a woman.
lore
We're gonna
deep
have to
dives.
revisit these game awards, but I don't think they actually happen until December. So
That's next
Yep.
month, bro. That's like in a week. Wait,
I know.
is it?
Zombie box review. It's all gobbledygook to me when
Oh,
you guys talk
yeah.
about guns. What,
And
does
he's
he
from
come
the
from?
UK.
I was about to say, is he from a communist country where he doesn't have fun?
Yeah, England.
Dude, specifically, M240s are notorious for negligent discharge because open bolt weapons, if you let go of the charging handle, there is the possibility that it'll light off the round that's already there.
You ever seen somebody
So-
fuck up on a 50 cal and that bolt and spring comes flying back at him?
Yeah, well, dude, that can do
It
some
will
serious
kill you.
damage. Yeah, like, that fucking shit. I do love we had the dual mounted 50 cal though. Those are so much fun to shoot.
Oh, like Cuba Gooding Jr. did in Pearl Harbor.
Yes. Oh yes.
Oh,
Underrated movie.
it just shows how good the Navy is that someone who's
Oh,
a cook
parts of it
can
are
be as
underrated,
effective
parts
as
of it are
someone
terrible.
completely trained operating that. Anyway, all right. So we're wrapping it up. Let's start. Matt, is your new channel launching soon?
Next week.
For those who are keeping track in the chat, that it's been launching next week. The last 7 appearances of Matt on our show. So
At
Like
least.
you kept count.
We have.
Well, look, don't listen to what I say. Feel what I mean.
Yeah.
sounds like a Mike
That's
Tyson
the ticket.
All right, Brahmo, tease your stuff.
Tomorrow night we got Bourbon and Boarding where Chad will be helping me out, and then Sunday morning we've got the Bullpen where Chad is a permanent co-host. So come check him out.
Oh, I forgot to tell you, I wrote you a theme song for your boarding and bourbon.
Yeah, I've got a couple that I gave to Brian, but send
Yeah,
me
yeah,
up
but
and-
I made this one. I wrote
okay.
this.
I see.
No, I
Doesn't
did this one.
automatically make it better, man.
One.
we still gotta listen and judge.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I've proven myself with my diss track on culture and your intro.
I don't know. I kind of miss the old intro. Simple and clean.
And Mad's left.
Come on, man. What the hell?
What did you expect?
You know he takes things personally.
I guess.
All right, Slender, do you have anything going on with Ascendant Arcade that you want to tease?
Just gaming streams. I did put a highlight reel out that I thought was pretty hilarious.
It did. I watched it.
earlier
I
today.
commented. It was hilarious because
Haven't
it was our
watched it yet.
triumphant return to party animals in
It
highlight
was.
form.
Still a lot of good fun stuff.
Yep. Anyway, so thanks everybody.
Also, it's sponsored by my mic fund.
Yeah. So if you copied wants to, I don't know, we'll have to figure out where they can do that to do that. Yeah, Eric, if you check out the highlights, there's some good stuff in a more condensed form. I think it's about 10 minutes long, so it's good to go.
They're usually between 6 and 10 minutes. They don't usually go much longer than that.
Yep. Anyway, so thanks, Chad, for hanging out. We'll see you guys next week. If you don't join us on the other programs that everybody mentioned that are coming up before that. Bye, everybody.
Bye.